I had just finished my second year of college, and I was on a hunt for a summer job when a friend of mine was telling me what he was doing for work, and he was really excited about it. He was so excited, in fact, that I decided I should check it out. He told me he made good money, and it was really flexible hours, so I found the local office of the same company that he worked at when I went home for the summer, and I went in for an interview. I realized pretty quickly that I was overdressed. It was more of a group interview style, and it felt more like one of those interviews that, like, if you could breathe, you were hired kind of thing. And so I had never been much of a salesman, but that summer I was well on my way to selling high-priced kitchen knives. Which sounds like, for me, a great way to spend a summer. We had our first team meeting, and the guy who was leading our orientation and the training and the team meeting, he was a younger guy, not younger than me, but he was kind of younger, and he was a smooth talker kind of guy, and he wore like a suit that just seemed a little bit too nice for what we were doing. And as he was doing the training, he showed pictures on the screen of some of these rock star knife salespeople around the world who were living the dream. Like, they were selling gobs of cutlery around the country, and they were taking these awesome Caribbean cruise vacations every year. And he put pictures of the cruise, and they were driving these really expensive cars, and he put pictures of the car, and it was just sort of tickling the dreams inside of each of us, thinking maybe we have found our niche for like the life that we've always wanted if we work hard enough and listen to this guy and follow the training instructions. And yet there was just a part of me that was kind of sitting back going, maybe there are a few of those superstars out there, but for most of us, it probably feels more like the daily grind. And we're going to go just start making the next call and going to the next house and doing the next demonstration and trying to sell the next kit. But I put myself to work. I pressed on, and I started calling everybody I knew, cold calls, and they trained us to call at the most convenient time for a person when they're not stressed out or busy about their day. They said, call at 7 a.m. in the morning and see if you can set up an interview, because nobody's worried about anything yet. They're just up and getting ready for work, and I just couldn't help but think that's probably the worst time to call people. But that's what they said. I couldn't bring myself to call them at 7 a.m. But then go set up the appointments and show them the knives, and the knives speak for themselves and make the sales. And so I did. I started with everybody I knew, and then I started with everybody they knew, and then everybody I didn't know, and I was cold calling. I was doing really well. And I remember sitting in the home of a dear lady at the church I attended at the time, and she was an older lady. Her name was Marcia, and we were sitting there, and she was just a sweet woman, and I'm not a salesperson by nature. And so I started with the $800 set. And just really kind of, leaned on the fact that this is an awesome set. It is. It's good stuff. And this is what everybody truly needs, is high-priced cutlery. So as we were talking through the features of the set, I could see inside she was just kind of churning. And she felt, I didn't put a lot of pressure, but she felt a lot of pressure. And I told her if she buys this, I'll make a certain amount of money, and this is what I'm going to do with it, and it's going to, fund my dreams and everything else. And so I could see the debate. I watched this play out on her face. This debate of, should I buy these knives? What is my husband going to say when he sees that I bought $800 worth of knives? And we deliberated in there, and I was just quiet. I just sat back and I let the process work itself out. And everything inside of me wanted to go, Marcia, just buy this $10 knife. It'll do most of what you need in your kit. Forget this, please. You don't need these. But I just sat there, and I watched, and I waited, and eventually she wrote the check and bought the big set of knives. And I just walked home thinking, goodness, I don't know if that was the right thing. And I remember at the next team meeting, I talked to that guy who was wearing the really nice clothes, and I just shared with him, I had this situation. I was sitting with Marcia, and I could tell this was probably a financial overburden for her. I just don't know if I did the right thing. And he made it pretty clear, you go for the sale. You did the right thing. She won't regret those knives. And I got the impression that such doubt and double-mindedness was really not welcome in the company, and so I pressed on. The final straw for me was getting a call from the secretary at the church saying, hey, we've gotten some complaints about you calling people. Can you please stop using the church directory to call people to sell them stuff? My heart just sank. I was waking up every day with a pit of anxiety bubble in my stomach. I hated to go to work. It's one of the only times in life where that ever happened. And that was the final straw. And so finally, I was doing really well, one of the best on our team, but I just went in and cashed in the chips and said, I'm going to do something else. I spent the rest of the summer shipping stuff out of a warehouse. I wonder if there's anybody in the room who your experience with Christianity or with church is a little bit like my experience at that job. You knew you were looking for something, you were hunting for something, you were searching for something, and a very excited friend invited you to something. And if you'd be honest, maybe it was just their enthusiasm and the contagion of their experience that brought you along with it, and you came to church or you came to something. And maybe there was a young, smooth-talking leader up front who was painting pictures of this dream life and all the things that sort of touched your heart deep down, and you thought, maybe this is what I've been looking for all along. And yet, when you got back to Monday, it just sort of felt like life as usual, the daily grind. And after a while, you go through this, and maybe you were even persuasive yourself, and you invited some people along, and you brought some people, and you convinced some people that this was the thing to do, but somewhere in the middle of your gut, there was just this gap of growing doubt. Maybe you even expressed this doubt to a believer friend or a Christian leader, and you got the clear impression that that is not what we do here. That's not what God wants. Maybe they even quoted Bible verses about you just need to believe, you just need to have faith, and you were trying, but the gap didn't go away. So for some of you, you just shoved it down, and you just tried to silence the questions, you tried to plod forward, and you just tried to be a good believer and do what you were told. But you knew they never really went away. And for others, maybe you just started drifting away from the team meetings. And for some, maybe you took that opportunity to just put in your resignation and leave the faith. I think that for some of us, we grew up with the impression that God has no use for doubters. I mean, what he wants is true believers. And when you got that message, and then you were honest with yourself in your quieter moments, and the gap of doubt never quite went away, you started to believe, well, I guess I am fringe at best, and I probably don't even belong here because there are these other people that seem to have it. Whatever it is, I don't. And so the doubt was the driver. You walk the other way. If you have doubt, the interesting thing is it's not really proportionate to how old you are. It can happen at any age, and it's not really proportionate to how spiritually mature you are. It can happen at any stage. If you feel that gap, you're in good company biblically. I want to share with you 3 stories surrounding the resurrection, surrounding Easter, but they're kind of fringe stories. They're stories we don't hear of a whole lot around the good news because these kind of people sometimes get margin pushed right out. The first one is from Matthew 28. It's the precursor to one of the most famous verses in the Bible, which we call the Great Commission. I want to read these verses to you, so we'll put them up. It's the precursor to the Great Commission where Jesus says, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Go into all the earth and make disciples. But this is what happened right before it. Jesus had just died. Matthew told the story of him rising from the dead. And then this is the grand meeting of the disciples and the risen Jesus. And verse 16 says, the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshiped. But some what? Then Jesus came to them and gave them the Great Commission. We can leave this up for a minute. These men had just undergone an emotional roller coaster for the last few days. The worst thing that could ever happen just happened. And then the best news that they couldn't believe just happened. And now they're caught in the middle of it. And this is the very moment where they see Jesus. They all see him. He's there. He's alive. And at the moment they see him, this stuff from inside springs up, and they all worship him because they realize this is God. This is the Savior. This is Jesus risen from the dead. And some doubted. Question: do you think Matthew means that among the 11 disciples, because Judas had already ended his life, so there was 11 left, do you think Matthew meant that there were like half of them that worshiped and the other half didn't? They were doubters? Or do you think maybe he's saying that when they saw him, they knew, they worshiped, but in the midst of the worship, some of them also had doubts? What I would love for you to notice is what happens immediately after Matthew tells us that the disciples doubt the risen Christ. He just tells us they're seeing him and doubting. What does Jesus do? The very next words, just like literally, what does it say he does? Somebody say it out loud. Second story is from Thomas, John 20. This is also after the resurrection, and this is some of the fallout of the resurrection, quite honestly. Thomas has a conversation with the others who had already seen him, but Thomas wasn't with him. You get the image that Thomas was just so grief-stricken that he had isolated himself, and while the other guys were hearing this good news, he wasn't a part of that first round. So here's what they see. The other disciples told Thomas, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side where he was stabbed with a spear and died, and we watched him die, I will not believe." I didn't skip any verses here. This is the next verse. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Give me your finger. Put it here. See my hands? Reach out your hand. Put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." We can take this down. You can imagine Thomas's emotional roller coaster himself, because he watched Jesus die, and now he's got the word of his trusted friends saying he's alive. Guys, I want to take this at face value, but come on, we saw him die. I'd like to be as excited as you are, but I just can't believe that. I just doubt that that's true. I would have to have a little bit more evidence than that if I'm going to jump in on this resurrection thing, right? He just made this profound confession of doubt public confession of doubt. That's what we have at the beginning of those verses. I don't believe it. I won't believe it unless I see some more evidence, unless I see Jesus himself. I'm sorry, guys. And then what happens next? After Thomas's public confession of doubt, what happens next? Jesus, the very next verse, Jesus comes into the room. He moves however he does it. He moves past their doors, their walls, their locks, and he comes into the room to be with the disciples. And the first word out of his mouth, the last word out of Thomas's mouth is doubt. The first word out of Jesus' mouth is what? You remember it? Peace. Not shame on you. Not, here I am. Like, what now? What's up now, Thomas? Yeah, you should be ashamed of yourself. I'm for real. No. Peace. He says peace to the disciples. Question, do you think John is implying that he looked at the other disciples and said peace and then he looked at Thomas? Or do you think he wanted peace for all of them, including the man he knew was wrestling with himself inside? Okay, here's what you wanted. You believe me now? Touch my hand. Feel the scars. Give me your hand. Yep, that right there, that was the spot. I'm here. And that profound public confession of doubt is followed by a profound public confession of belief. My Lord and my God. Not just I believe you're real, but I believe you. You are my Lord. And then Jesus says something interesting. It's interesting that this is the place that he says, stop doubting and believe, because Thomas just said, my Lord and my God, and then Jesus says, stop doubting and believe. It's as if Jesus was saying, okay, Thomas, you had the doubts. We've gone through this thing here where you've seen me and you've touched me and you've heard me talk to you, and now you've understood and you've believed. Now it's time to transform that doubt into belief. What kind of man would Thomas be if Jesus left the room that day and he woke up the next morning and he went through his own mind saying, gosh, that was pretty compelling, but that could have been a ghost. I mean, all the disciples could have had the same vivid dream and woke up and thought it was real. Maybe Jesus really didn't die. Maybe he just kind of fainted on the cross and that spear just like barely pierced his skin. Maybe Jesus was born with a twin that we never met and then he decided to make a big appearance. What kind of man would Thomas be if he woke up the next day and persisted in his doubt? No. Time to turn this doubt into belief, Thomas. Jesus presses the issue a little farther. He says, Thomas, you believe me because you got to get 5 senses around me. You got to touch me. You got to see me. From here on out, God is going to call for a higher version of faith from humanity than this. Because I'm going to the Father, and the Father is sending His Spirit, and people are going to have to learn to open up their spiritual eyes and ears and believe. God wants to call for something deeper and more intense than what you just experienced. The Spirit will. Throughout the ages, throughout the world, the Spirit of God will speak. He will show up. He will orchestrate circumstances in people's lives. He will move toward their doubt, but they got to open their spiritual eyes to see it. And they've got to become believers. Here's the last one. This is pre-resurrection. This is Matthew 14. The word choice that Matthew uses for doubting here is the same word he uses for doubting in Matthew 28 when they worshiped and doubted. And it's a famous story about Jesus walking on the water. It says Peter went over to the other side of the boat and walked on water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back in the boat, again, not skipping verses here. This is the layout. When they climbed back in the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshiped him. "You really are the Son of God," they said. Now, as epic failures go, this is probably one of Peter's greatest. It's probably not his greatest, but it's one of his greatest. He's on the water. He's obviously already taken steps to do the impossible here, and then he starts getting distracted, he starts fearing, he starts doubting, and he's literally drowning in his own doubt. And if you consider success not having doubts, he certainly is failing. Yes, he was looking at Jesus and got distracted. Yes, he started doubting even while he was already doing the miracle. And he started drowning and almost died. But if you look at it from a different perspective, he was also the only one of the disciples that got out of the boat. I mean, surely Peter had the most doubt of the whole group. He had the most doubt, but he also had the most faith. He was the one that had the courage to get out and do it in the first place. And so you got to see this. The doubt and the faith are commingled here. And what did Jesus do when Peter doubted? I hope you see the pattern here. What did Jesus do when Peter doubted? He immediately saved him. He did not watch him drown in his failure. He didn't say, "Well, you have a few seconds before you have to die under there. I hope you muster up some faith while you're down there, and then you'll rise back up to the top. Hey guys, why don't you go help out your poor buddy Peter? He's thrown him a line." Do you think that God hates doubters? Do you think that Jesus is always shoving you to the margins? The disciples already knew that Jesus could heal people. They'd seen him do it. They actually believed that Jesus had power to heal by this point in the story. They had already seen Jesus cast out demons. They believed that Jesus could cast out demons, but they had never seen anybody walk on water. They'd probably seen people drown, but they've never. So this was like a new layer of doubt for them. It's not that they didn't believe in Jesus. It's just that it was like this new level of doubt gave rise to the opportunity for a new level of belief. And what do? They see this new level of who Jesus is, and they say to him, "You really are the Son of God." It's not like we really didn't believe that, but wow, now there's a whole nother level of belief. Perhaps doubt is like the mortar to our bricks of belief. Perhaps doubt is like the mortar to our bricks of belief. If you've ever built a brick wall or even played around with the idea, or if you've ever seen structures and have the faintest idea of what a brick wall looks like, you can take bricks and you can, if you want, you can take a bunch of bricks and just set them on top of one another. And if you do that, you will have a brick wall structure, and it will probably stand, but it will not be strong. You build a brick wall like that, just putting one brick on top of the other, and a strong windstorm comes and hits, what's going to happen to that wall? You got a person that's not paying attention and falls hard, bumps into that wall, what's going to happen to that wall? Maybe that's a good image for people who are handed things that they're told to believe, and they suppress the doubt, and they just pile it on because they don't want to deal with the anxiety or the uncertainty of wrestling with their doubt. They think doubt there's no space for that. There's no gap margin for me to doubt. And so in order to please the people around them and to accept what they feel they should accept, they just blindly take things in and they stack belief upon belief. And you hit a storm in life that pushes on that spot, and it tests whether you really believe it. If you want to build a brick wall strong, you have to apply mortar between the bricks. And when you apply the mortar, then you set the next brick on, and it becomes the housing, the glue, the bonding, the strengthening agent for that next brick. And this is a good image, perhaps for how God builds belief in his people. I think there's a soft mortar that we can have in our hearts. It's the kind of doubt that expects. It's the kind of doubt that worships while you doubt. It's not that you've stopped worshiping. You're still worshiping, but it's just hard to believe. You don't know what's going to happen. And if you were honest with yourself, you'd say, Jesus, I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know if you're still with me. I don't know if you've heard my prayers. I don't know if you're paying attention to this, but this seems to be falling apart. This seems to be a huge gap, and I don't know what's going to happen. And there's doubt there, but it's soft. It's expectant. It's anticipatory doubt. It's doubt that believes and hopes and worships and watches for the time when Christ comes toward the doubt like he did for the disciples, and where he affirms and strengthens a new belief. It's doubt like Peter that says, I'm drowning, Lord, save me. Come to me and help me. It's doubt like Thomas that transforms. And when it transforms from soft doubt and Jesus comes and he establishes a new belief, it strengthens and it becomes belief. And it's strong. Like Thomas's confession of doubt turning into a confession of belief. There is a danger here, though. There's a danger in this whole process, because if you apply mortar and you don't put a brick of belief, after too much time, what's going to happen in that mortar? That soft mortar is going to go hard and crusty. And when that happens, it's almost impossible to lay the next brick. It would be better if you hadn't had the mortar on it at all, because you try to lay it on and it's going to be uneven, it's going to fall off, it's hard to get there. See, doubt is not neutral and static. Doubt will move in a direction of belief when Christ comes and he gives us faith, he gives us himself, and we establish the belief. Or doubt will harden into unbelief. Not the same thing. Doubt and unbelief aren't the same thing. But it could move into a hardened heart. A rock-solid unbelief. The main difference is what you do with your doubt. This is the message I'm sharing with you this morning. This is the message of Easter, that God sent his son, Jesus, to save the world, including you. And that Jesus gave up his life. Nobody took it from him. He gave it up on a Roman cross to die a death that defeated death, to pay a consequence you and I were over-indebted to for our sin. That Jesus, through the garden before he died, when he was praying to God, was bleeding sweat drops of blood, that Jesus was beaten, that Jesus was nailed, that he was mocked, that he was abandoned, that he was betrayed, and that he was dead. Historical person buried in a cave-like tomb, big stone rolled in front of it, guards watching it day and night. And that Jesus beat all of that, conquered what we consider the end, and was resurrected to life. And gave his Spirit to those who believe. This is the message that I'm sharing with you this morning. That just as God loved his Son, he loves you because of his Son. That just as God was with Jesus through betrayal, he will be with you through the worst of it. Through your betrayals, through your broken hearts, through your abandonments, through your sweat and drops of blood and anxiety, through your suffering and even death. And that if Jesus rose, you will rise. I know sometimes that's hard to believe. Or at least we worship and sometimes there's doubt. I think there are some this morning who, for whatever reason, you're here and you are at the place of unbelief almost. Your doubt has hardened, and your heart is hardened, and you're resisting Jesus. And you're refusing to submit to him, and you're refusing to make the statement of belief, and he's been speaking to you, his Spirit's been talking to you, and you know it. And yet you are persisting toward unbelief. And this morning may be the very time where God wants to break off that hard mortar and apply a fresh layer so he can do something new in your life. Because you've been resisting Jesus. If that's the case for you, the great part about it is I don't have to convince you, you already know. Because I'm just saying what you've already been hearing in the ears of your spirit, how God has been at work in your life. I don't have to convince you, but I do want to coach you to understand what it means. It means that Jesus has appeared to Thomas, and he appeared to the 11, and he is appearing to you. And he wants you to believe and have life. He's in it for you. It's for your own good. It's what you were made for. But you've got to take that doubt and soften it and let him place faith and respond. Listen, if that's where you are today, I don't know why you're here, but let's take a moment and respond to God. I want to walk you through how easy that is to just say yes. Look at how easy it was for Thomas. He didn't give a speech. When he touched the hands of Christ, he just said it. Oh, you are my Lord. You're my God. Same thing with the disciples. Wow, you are the Son of God. And if you're there, I just want to guide you in a simple statement of faith like that to Jesus today. This could be the day. So pray with me if that's where you are, and I just want to give you some words that you can quietly say to God, and if you say those with your heart, he hears it. You say something like this: Jesus, I do believe. Help my unbelief. I've been on the fence. I've had doubts, and I probably still will. But if the truth is told, it's not just my doubts. There's some unbelief and resistance. But today, I just want to make you my Lord. I want to surrender my life to the one who conquered death. I don't want to follow you. I'll worship while I doubt. I'll let you build this faith brick thing brick by brick. And I may not start by having it all together, but I've seen enough of you in my life and in the lives of others to believe in you. So today, I am counted among the believers. Forgive me, welcome me, teach me. That's what church is. Not a place. It's not a thing that we do when we gather. Church is a people. It's a group of people with worship together and doubt. But we believe. We believe in the one who's here. I think there are probably some of you who are here this morning, and you have a strong, established foundation. I mean, you've believed rock hard for a long time, the basics. But maybe there's some new level in your life where things have happened that you just, honestly, it's brought up new layers of doubt because you've never been here before. And you've trusted that God loves you, but you're just kind of going, I'm not sure he's still paying attention. And you believe that Christ is with you, but it seems like it's been a long time since he's answered the prayers. And you've gotten the bad diagnosis, or the grades are falling apart, or you've lost some friendships, or your marriage is on the rocks, or got major financial insecurities, or whatever has come. It's this new layer, and you almost feel like you're going back to the beginning and going, God, I'd love to say I am 100% confident in you, but I'm not. It's okay. Don't fake it. Don't fake it. Don't force it. And don't just slap a thing that you say you believe on top of it just to eliminate the moments of uncertainty. What I want to challenge you to do is have the doubt, but make it expectant doubt. Soften it before God and cry out to Jesus and say, Lord, save me, because you're already moving. Move toward him while you doubt. Worship him while you doubt. And if you do, if you hang on, he will come. At that very point of your doubt, he'll move toward you, and he will establish a new level of faith in you where there's nothing right now. He will solidify a stronger belief. He's done it before. He'll do it again. Can you stand together as we close in song? In his story earlier, Chris talked about driving home, and in his car, he surrendered his life to God. That was a critical, key moment in his life where doubt became a strength of faith. If that was your moment today, if you prayed with me, I just have 2 requests for you. Number 1 is, before you leave today, hang a cross on the back wall to celebrate. We celebrate anytime someone makes that step. That is a great celebration for what God has done in your life. So on the back wall, hang a cross before you go. The second request I have for you is, let us know so we can help you have a baptism. That's sort of the bookend of the public profession of faith. We're doing that at the end of the 10:30 service today. Let us know. Get a hold of the church office, email somebody, and just say, hey, I'd like to publicly say this: Jesus is my Lord. I want to be baptized. How do I do that? We'd love to help you do that. If you were a guest with us for the very first time today, I'd love to send you home with a gift. We've actually prepared a gift for you, and what I'd ask for you to do is, you've got a communication card in front of you, right in the seat in front of you. It says communication card. Whatever information you feel comfortable to put that on there, and then on the table right behind this wall, when you go out, there's a welcome table. Drop the card there, take a gift mug with you. It's got chocolate and a gift certificate to Starbucks. That's just our way of saying we're glad that you were here, and take that with you today. If you have any kind of prayer request and you don't want to leave with that on hanging over your shoulders, somebody will be up here right afterwards to pray for you. So you're welcome to just come up to them and ask them to pray for something. They'll pray for whatever you need. I want to invite you back next week. We're starting a short series, and even if this is your very first time with us, you're welcome to jump into this series. It's called Mom and Dad, Honoring Our Sometimes Not So Honorable Parents. We're looking at the 5th commandment and dealing with some of the reality of what it means to grow up with imperfect parents and to become imperfect parents, deal with some of the healing that takes place in those tremendously impactful relational dynamics. So I just want to invite you back for that. It's going to be very practical. You're welcome to invite a friend or family member. You're welcome to invite your parents. Just don't tell them the title. So that'll sort of undo the whole purpose. But we start that next week. And now may the love of God, the peace of Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you as you go. You are sent.